What's up, team? Okay. I saw Toy Story 5 last night. I went to go see it opening night. Um, so Thursday, the 18th, at the first showing that was available at my local theater. Uh, because I love Toy Story and I had heard really good things in the pre-screening previews. Some people that had seen the movie early had said it was really good. So I was excited to see the movie, and I thought the premise of the movie was interesting and topical, like relevant to today. Um, the premise being that there's this uh, you know tablet character that comes in and replaces the toys in the eyes of Bonnie, and that creates the main conflict of the story. I thought that was an interesting premise. So I had high expectations going in, so I want to say that before I get to my thoughts on the movie. So, this is my review of Toy Story 5, and as you may be able to tell from the tone of my voice, I absolutely hated that movie. I hated it. I'm it is hard to put into words how much I hated it. Like, it frankly felt like a slap in the face. It was insulting. And I've like looked at the consensus on the critic reviews and everything, and the vast majority of people are saying that this is a good movie. And I just don't understand. Even if you go into it without the pretense of it being a Toy Story movie, on its own merits it sucks. Like, it's horrible. Uh it's just a bad movie, but as a Toy Story movie, it's insulting. Um I I despise this film. I The fact that it exists and was made for $250 million, that they spent that much money to make this absolute garbage film, which I genuinely almost walked out of the theater. I cannot remember the last time I was like, I'm gonna walk out of this theater. I can't remember the last time. I I hated it. It made me actually gag multiple times. I shook my head and rolled my eyes more than probably in any movie in my entire life. I hated it. There is exactly one good scene in the entire film. It lasts about a minute and a half, and they could have just made a short of that scene in the film and it would have been great. But they and it has nothing to do with the central premise of the film, by the way. We'll get there. The only scene in the movie that is necessary and and poignant and makes sense and feels like Toy Story is removed from the central plot of the film itself. It's crazy. I Anyway, I hated the film. I think it is dog shit. Excuse my French. I I would it was the worst theater experience I've had in probably a decade or more. I I genuinely despise everything about this film from like a foundational level. Um Toy Story is like a really special story. Toy Story is a cultural juggernaut. And The first three films are a perfect trilogy of children's films, culminating in the greatest send-off for any character that I can think of in modern history. Toy Story 4 was a completely serviceable movie. I didn't love it, but I had nowhere near this reaction to Toy Story 4. Toy Story 4 was fine. It did it need to exist? No, I don't it didn't need to exist, but was it egregious? No. Toy Story 4 was a fine movie with an interesting central concept, um, and had things to say about the nature of toys, and it also felt like an appropriate sort of epilogue to Woody's arc specifically. This movie, Toy Story 5, is vomit inducingly corporate. It is overstuffed, poorly paced, unfunny, weirdly depressing. It's somehow really mean-spirited, but also toothless in tackling its central premise. It's baffling. I I can't even wrap my brain around how this got through a writer's room. Like, it's just okay. You can tell I'm emotional about this. I hate this movie. I I walked out of that theater. I didn't even. I got like 3 seconds into the credits and then stormed out of the theater. The the other families that were in the movie theater looked at me funny as I left because I was clearly just pissed off. Um, I'm going to talk about the other families' reactions to the movie as we go because I think that's also important. Um, but I saw the movie by myself. So let's just start from the beginning. Spoiler alert, though. Um, Honestly, screw this movie. So, frankly, I am telling you, do not go see this movie. Just as like this the if you get anything out of this video, please do not pay money to see this movie. Please help this movie completely bomb. I know it's going to make $1 billion, and I'm already pissed off about that. It doesn't deserve it. It deserves to flop and die. Um, but people are going to go see this movie in droves because it's a Toy Story movie. I am begging you, please do not support this movie with your money. It's trash and not worth it. It's not even worth your time or attention. It's not even worth you watching this review to get an opinion about it. You should just remove it from your entire existence. You should pretend it doesn't exist. And after this review, after I've done my rant about it, I'm going to do that. I'm going to pretend it does not exist. And I'm going to completely shut it from my memory because it's so egregiously awful and frustrating and insulting. But let's start from the beginning, shall we? Immediately, something was off. I knew within like a minute of this film that something was wrong. The opening sequence is this collection of Buzz Lightyear toys that are like upgraded high-tech versions of Buzz Lightyear. They have this like LED screen on their chest to indicate that they're this high tech version. And we get the first sense of that because they communicate with each other as sort of like a hive mind using some sort of like wireless signal connection between them. And immediately I was like, didn't we do this already? That was my first thought. Because in Toy Story 2, Buzz sees a huge toy aisle full of Buzz Lightyears. And Buzz goes through an arc in Toy Story 2 where he effectively has the exact same arc that these Buzz Lightyears are supposed to be having in Toy Story 5, but much more effectively and with a better payoff. That sentence I just said, much more effectively and with a better payoff, may as well apply to every single aspect of this film. It has so many retreads of lessons and story arcs and character arcs that we have seen before in Toy Story done better. With literally one exception that I already talked about. And if you've seen the movie, you probably know what I'm going to say. But immediately I was like, why are these Buzz Lightyear characters even in this film? But I kind of gave it a chance because I was like, okay, maybe their like wireless connection to each other is going to have something to do with the, the commentary on the internet and this lily pad character, and maybe their integration into the plot will make sense once they get to the main story. But it starts with this vignette of these Buzz Lightyear toys being on this deserted island, and then their like hive mind builds a raft and they leave the island with the intention of reaching Star Command. Okay. Which, again, we've already seen Buzz Lightyear's, like new Buzz Lightyear toys that just come into sentience. And how they still have that I'm a space ranger, I'm, trying to reach Star Command, Zurg is my enemy, blah, blah. We've seen all of that already. Anyway, we didn't need to retread that, but here we are. But I was like, maybe they get integrated into the story. Spoiler alert, they never get integrated into the story at all. Their presence in the film is completely pointless. It has zero purpose whatsoever. We're 3 minutes into this movie, and the like opening vignette of these characters means nothing. There's no point. I don't know why they even exist. Like, why did they? If anyone can answer this question for me, I would be really curious to understand how anyone can justify this. What is the point of these Buzz Lightyears, these high-tech Buzz Lightyears? Why are they even in the movie at all? What is their purpose? What are they supposed to be doing? And what message are they trying to tell you? That they do nothing. They mean nothing. I think it's about halfway through the movie, there's this very odd sequence where they're going through this like forest trail, and one of them like gets stuck. First of all, they all like freeze as soon as humans show up on this trail, so they all sort of like fall over frozen. And then when they get up, one of them says, "Why did we freeze?" Which is supposed to like try to patch up a plot hole in the original Toy Story, where Buzz in the original Toy Story does the toy freeze with Andy, even though he is supposed to think that he's like a real space ranger. But that plot hole is irrelevant and doesn't matter. That we already kind of knew the answer to this question, which is that Buzz is a toy, so he's going to act like a toy when humans are around looking at him. Whether he believes he's a toy or not doesn't matter. He is a toy. So unless he like makes the conscious decision to be active in front of a human like Buzz or like Woody does at the end of Toy Story 1 with Sid, they're automatically going to go rigid and become toys because that's their nature. So they didn't need to answer this question. It's like a totally unnecessary patch up of what they consider a plot hole from the first film. It's a Reddit plot hole. It's like it doesn't matter. And I actually want to pin this because this will come up later in the review. So something that this movie does is like reference these supposed plot holes from previous films, but all that does is serve to expose the incredible number of plot holes and inconsistencies in this film, and also teaches you that a good movie which has a solid premise, great characters, good writing, and keeps you engaged and doesn't shoot itself in the foot constantly. A good movie can have some little plot holes in it, and it doesn't matter. When Toy Story 1 came out, no one was asking this question. Maybe a couple people, but like generally speaking, people just accepted the premise that the toys are toys and that they only come to life when humans aren't looking at them. And that, among other little inconsistencies in Toy Story 1, 2, and 3, and there are some, I'm not going to say that those movies are perfect in any sense, but those little inconsistencies don't matter because those movies are so good and their central premise is solid and the characters have strong motivations and are well written, and the central conceit isn't sabotaged by other aspects coming in and ruining it. So the movies are so good you don't care about the plot holes. A bad movie, a movie where you get that feeling in your gut like this movie sucks, all you're doing the whole movie is looking for those glaring plot holes and inconsistencies because you already have this feeling like this movie is terrible, and so you're finding reasons why it's terrible. So you can get away with having little plot holes and things in a movie if the movie's good. You cannot get away with it if the movie's bad. If the movie's bad, all of those plot holes and inconsistencies turn into more reasons to hate it. And that's what this movie does. So we'll go back to it. So the buzzes are going through the woods. They all freeze. One of them goes, "Why did we freeze?" They end up like climbing this tree, but one of the buzzes is like stuck under a branch or whatever. So he's on the trail, and this kid comes and picks him up, and he like goes to his brother. He's like, "Hey, check this out." Well, the buzzes all come together, and they're like, "We need to go save him. We need to rescue our fellow ranger." So there's immediately two problems. The first is they all have this wireless connection to each other, right? So they all can see and hear and think together. That's like the central premise of these high-tech Buzz Lightyears, is that they have this wireless connection to each other and they all work together as a group. So they should immediately know that this other Buzz is not in danger. But they go to rescue him. They like go on this mission. They pick up a bunch of weapons and they're going to go infiltrate this tent because this family is like camping out in the woods. And the buzzes look in, and this one Buzz Lightyear toy is being held by this kid in the camp, in the tent, while the dad's like telling a story. And they all look at the Buzz Lightyear toy and they all sort of come to this realization that, oh, he's okay. This feels right. They like, you can see it in their face. Like they animate it such that you get this sense that these Buzz Lightyears are touched by this and that he's okay. And the Buzz that's being held by the kid looks at them and like nods and gives a thumbs up. And so in that moment, that Buzz that's being held by the kid immediately recognizes that this is where he's supposed to be, that his purpose is to make this kid happy. Maybe he doesn't understand the word toy yet, but at the very least, he knows that he is where he should be. And that information should disseminate. to all of these other Buzz Lightyears. But after this moment, they just continue as normal, like nothing happened. They leave this Buzz behind with this kid at the campsite, and they keep going as if they didn't see anything. So the whole scene is completely pointless. There's also, like, in that same sequence, there's this weird section where, like, music from Bambi comes in as, like, forest animals are, like, interacting with the Buzzes. And what it feels like it's leading up to is that one of those animals is going to get shot or something. It's very strange tonally, and completely unnecessary. If the point of that scene was to, like, show that the animals don't cause the Buzzes to go rigid, but the humans do, we already knew that because of Buster in the original movies. I think it's Toy Story 2, right, when Buster's introduced. The dog obviously doesn't have any issue with the toys being alive, so we know that animals don't care anyway. But that whole sequence, again, means nothing because this one Buzz, who's connected to all the other Buzz Lightyears by this wireless connection, they all share a connection with each other, stays with this kid at this campsite. And this should be a revelatory moment for all of these Buzz Lightyears as they see it happening. But they learn nothing, and they just keep going on their mission to Star Command. So it's completely pointless, along with everything else these Buzz Lightyears do in the movie. The conclusion of these Buzz Lightyears arc, if you can call it that, is that they end up at Jesse's old owner's house, Emily's house, because they see a photo of Jesse that had been sent by like an old school digital camera apparatus onto the cloud, basically. And they see this picture and they see Jessie with a star on her because she's the sheriff. And they're like, Star Command. And they go to find Jessie. And as a result, they end up at this address. Okay. So, first of all, that entire thing is a gigantic plot hole for reasons we'll get into when we start talking about the other characters in this movie. But they get there. Okay. All these Buzz Lightyears get to this house. And at that point, Woody and Buzz are there. And they, for some reason, they kidnap and torture Woody. And then Buzz, our Buzz, the original Buzz, infiltrates their ranks and tells them all that they are toys. And literally within seconds, they're like, oh, toys, we're toys. Oh, okay, that makes perfect sense. What? There's so many problems with this. Number one, they already had this realization in the woods with this kid at the camp. But second, aren't Buzz Lightyear supposed to be completely averse to the fact that they're toys? Isn't that like the entire central conceit of the first film? And they resolve it in seconds. And suddenly all of these Buzz Lightyear toys are like, yeah, we're toys. Okay, cool. There's no progression. It's just they are okay with it. And then they end up like, you know, being at the behest of our main trio, Jessie, Woody, and Buzz. And they go along with them to like complete, you know, the mission of the third act of the film, which is its own problem. And the only reason that they are there is so that the tablet character can magically upgrade them and give them the ability to fly somehow. And then they all like turn into drones and fly off with all of the toys. That's literally the only reason that they are there. But they don't get any character development whatsoever, and they don't matter. And they're absent at the end of the film. So we have no idea what happens to them. They just disappear. It's absurd. That is one aspect of this movie. It's like 4 scenes in the movie with these Buzz Lightyears, and it does nothing for the movie. They never once make any statement about how the buzzes are wirelessly connected to each other, or their connection to the internet, or why that matters, or like if these Buzz Lightyears are going to replace the original Buzz Lightyear, or like anything. None of that matters. They are entirely pointless. They did not need to be in the movie. I mean, the movie didn't need to exist at all, but if they're gonna make this movie, they could have at least made a cohesive film. But these Buzz characters are just like this weird set of vignettes and filler that doesn't mean anything. It doesn't matter. Why are they there? Okay. We cut after this initial Buzz Lightyear scene to Bonnie's house. And Jessie is the leader of the toys. Totally fine. She like takes over as sheriff with Buzz as her deputy. There's like a play scene. Now, I just want to say right off the rip, the play scenes in this movie are very odd. They look weird. They have this like Sony animation Into the Spider-Verse style animation going on, and I hate it. That's just my personal taste. You may like that animation style in this context, and fair enough if you do. It does create a separation between what's happening in the real world and then play. So I get the idea, but ultimately it just feels jarring and weird, and I don't like it. And also, more importantly, in Toy Story 3, the opening sequence of them playing with like the Western scene and them all, you know, being a part of this universe that Andy built with his imagination is perfect. It's perfect. That play scene is the only one that ever needed to exist because it is perfect. It 100% sells that the toys see how they are being played with differently. They see it as real. Like the imagination becomes their reality. And it's tactile and it's exciting and it's bombastic and it totally sells it. That opening sequence of Toy Story 3 is like one of the greatest things I've ever seen. And by comparison, the play scenes in this movie are just awful. They underservice the importance of play and imagination to these toys by being this like weird separate animation style and like not being as like again the Andy play sequence is just perfect, so like they can't replicate that and they can't redo it, so like everything else feels null by comparison, and it undersells it, which is sad because one of the things that this movie is trying to tell you is that imagination and play are super important. But I found myself during those scenes just kind of rolling my eyes and being like, I don't like this. So it directly goes against the thing the movie's trying to tell you, which is that these play sequences are like the ultimate reality for these toys. And we already know that because of Toy Story 3. And we already got the best possible example of that in Toy Story 3. Anyway, the first play sequence is a marriage between Forky, who I actually think is a really interesting character, and the central plot of Toy Story 4 revolving around Forky is quite interesting and delves into kind of the nature of toys and what toys are. And in the context of this universe is really interesting. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. It's between Forky and this plastic knife that gets forkied up, basically, by Bonnie. Her name is like Hannah Beverly or something like that, which is pretty funny. But it's a marriage between those two characters, and like all the other characters are part of this wedding. Well, the reason they do that is to, number one, set up like a funny companion for Forky, but that companion basically never speaks in the movie. I think she has like a line, maybe two, and she comes off as like this nothing of a character. Like, it's very strange. So she's introduced to create this wedding, and then the reason they do that is to set up that Buzz wants to propose to Jessie. So Buzz wants to marry Jessie because of this wedding play scene at the beginning of the film. Well, the entire movie, the only thing that Buzz cares about is proposing to Jessie. And the impetus for his entire involvement in this story is adjunct to Jessie because he is obsessed with proposing to her. Now, I want to go back for a second. I love the dynamic between Buzz and Jessie. It started in Toy Story 2. It was adorable then. It continues to be adorable. I have no problem with Buzz and Jessie being a thing. But Buzz is a character that used to be, number one, vitally important to every film in the series, and number two, used to have like this masculinity about him. He used to have this like sense of like self-certainty, and he used to have this like confidence and this, you know, that was part of the appeal of the character, even from day one in Toy Story 1, is that he was so sure of himself, borderline braggadocious, and that he was confident and strong, and whereas Woody, you know, had these feelings of self-doubt, Buzz was always this rock. And in this movie, it's like that character is gone. He's not in this film. It's not the same Buzz. He's useless. I get that they wanted to have this running thing with him wanting to propose to Jessie, which is like cute or whatever for a kids movie, but ultimately all it does is remove all of Buzz's agency and makes him feel like he didn't even really need to be involved. I'm going to take a second to stop and just say Jessie is the protagonist of this film, ostensibly. We'll go back to that. But the film, from the toys' perspective, centers around Jessie, which I'm going to sound like one of those like Reddit manosphere idiots when I say this, but I just don't think Jessie has the ability to carry the film on her own. And they really put all of the emphasis on her. I love the character Jessie. I love Joan Cusack's performance. I think she's wonderful in this film and always has been as Jessie. She has such a dynamic, interesting voice. The character has a great backstory, a wonderful arc. She's a great sort of foil to Woody. There's lots of reasons to love the character, but in this film, she just doesn't have the thing that she needs to have to carry it. And I think part of it is that, well, there's two parts. Number one, she's relearning the same lessons that Woody and Buzz have learned and that she should have learned by the end of like Toy Story 3. And that makes it seem like she is a dud of a character that never learns and has no development at all and is like constantly regressive. Whereas Woody actually grows over the course of Toy Stories 1 through 4 and comes to these realizations, learns these lessons. And really, every Toy Story movie up to this point, 1 through 4, has been about Woody struggling with something and then coming to a realization and learning a lesson about that thing. So in this movie with Jessie, they basically like retread a lot of that same ground that we have already gone down with Woody, but with less impact. And like it doesn't service the film at all, like the premise of the film. Ultimately, what the movie has advertised itself to be about is the way modern technology has entered kids' lives and removed their interest in toys, traditional toys. Almost every Toy Story movie is ostensibly about the fear of replacement. Okay? Or the fear of losing your connection to the thing that gives you purpose. So in the first movie, Woody is afraid of being replaced by Buzz and losing his connection with Andy. In the second movie, it's about Woody's insecurity about who he is, where he comes from, his nature as a toy, and whether or not he still even has the ability to be a toy for Andy because of his relationship with the Woody's Roundup characters. By the way, every time I think about Toy Story 2, I'm like, that movie is so good. It's a masterpiece. That film is unbelievable. Anyway, and in the third movie, it's really about Woody coming to terms with Andy becoming an adult and how their nature as toys has to change because their kid is not going to be a kid forever. And all toys have to learn this lesson eventually. And at the end of Toy Story 3, Woody does learn this lesson in like a very poignant way. So Long Partner is like, I'm tearing up just thinking about it. So Woody has already gone through all of this. And even in Toy Story 4, it's about Woody coming to a realization about his nature as a toy, the nature of toys in general, and sort of passing the torch off to Jessie and Buzz and going off to be his own person, basically, and, to live his own life. All of these lessons throughout these first 4 movies were earned. And I felt like there was a genuine growth of character. And they all centered around this realization and this lesson that had to be learned. And crucially, this is so important, those lessons are universal but specific to being a toy. That's why it works. We can all get something from the lessons that especially Toy Story 1 through 3 teach you about friendship, about letting go, about growing up, about finding yourself, about acceptance, about all of these universal subjects that are so critically important, but we learn all of these through this really focused lens of Woody and Buzz and how they interact with the universe around them. And this movie, Toy Story 5, takes all of those lessons, tries to retread them, but does so in a shallow, uninspired way through a character, Jessie, that deserves better than this. And I really mean that. Like, I think Jessie is great. She's a wonderful character. And I adore her in Toy Story 2, especially. She's like one of the emotional anchors of that movie. Her relationship with Woody, her backstory with Emily. But all of those things are resolved. Jessie gets very lucky because she encounters Woody in Toy Story 2. As a result of that, she ends up being one of Andy's toys, which she never would have been if not for Woody. But she finds a new home. And then in Toy Story 3, all of the toys have this sort of same existential crisis about Andy growing up, but they all find a new home also in Bonnie. And so the torch keeps getting passed, right? And so Jessie has now been through 2 sequences from Emily to Big Al to Andy. That's the first sequence. And then from Andy to Bonnie. Really, Andy to the daycare to Bonnie. She's been through 2 sequences of this already where she should have learned by now that she can't be in one person's life forever. People grow up. And that she just has to be the best toy she can be for that kid for the time that she has with them. This is like the entire premise of Toy Story. And in this movie, it's like all of that work that her character has gone through, all of these lessons she's learned, are completely out the window. And we retread this exact same premise of we're going to be replaced by something else. It's literally Woody being afraid he's going to be replaced by Buzz again, with Jessie afraid she's going to be replaced by Lily, the lily pad tablet character. It's the exact same thing, and the lesson is exactly the same. So I'll just go ahead and talk about the one scene in this movie that I liked, because it's important to this topic. Jessie ends up at Emily's house because on the inside of the like lapel on her jeans, she has Emily's name written and then the address. So at one point she's like on the side of the road and this old couple picks her up and they take her to Emily's address, which that's fine, by the way. If they want to put Jessie in that situation, I think that's a good way to like sort of jumpstart the plot. So I didn't have any problem with that. Once she gets there, there's all sorts of problems, but she ends up at this house. A bunch of useless stuff happens, and then she ends up at the tree with the tire swing that is in the flashback of Toy Story 2. By the way, I'm going to back up for just a second. In Toy Story 2, we never really see Emily's face. It's like blurred out. Emily is like and that's intentional, by the way, because the idea is that it's been so long that Jessie has been separated from Emily that she's basically forgotten what she looks like. And she's just catching these glimpses of the good times she once had with her girl, her child. But then literally right at the beginning of this movie, they show Emily front and center, fully loaded, with a like full on facial animations, and it's like, doesn't that destroy the entire point of the original movie, keeping her blurred? Like, that's its own problem. But anyway, whatever. She goes to this tree, and there's a carving on the tree that says Jesse was here with an arrow pointing down. And I initially was like, oh, that's sweet. Like, before Emily left the house, because this new girl moves in, she, like, as a memory of Jesse, carved into the tree that her toy used to sit there while she played. Turns out it's much more than that. There's a time capsule buried under the tree. And when Jesse opens the time capsule, the big reveal is that Jesse is actually Emily's daughter, and that Emily named her daughter after Jesse, which is incredibly sweet. And I teared up. I'm not going to lie to you. I was crying. Everybody was crying. That scene is beautiful and is a good, like, sort of capstone to the Jesse story. And I think if they had just made like a short of, Jesse ending up back at the house and then finding this time capsule and having this closure moment, that would have been probably one of the best received shorts ever made. It's really poignant and touching, and I loved it. But everything surrounding that is completely pointless. And this is the part that is critical. That moment is essentially ruined immediately by two things. Number one, while Jesse, the toy, is looking at the photo of Emily as an adult and Jesse, her child, she says out loud, I rolled my eyes at this. She says out loud, Emily named her daughter after me. It's like, yeah, duh. We don't need you to say that. It's implied. Pixar used to be so good at this, like, subtle storytelling. One of the best examples is the beginning of Up. Can you imagine if during that Up sequence at the beginning of the movie, if the characters are like lying on her deathbed and she goes, I'm really sad because we never got to have kids and now I'm dying. That's what this was. That's what this felt like. Can you imagine that? How awful that would have been? How much it would have ruined it? You don't just say the thing. It's implied by the visual storytelling. That's why you're making an animation. That's why you're making the movie. And so that really upset me. I'm like in the middle of bawling my eyes out, and then she's like, Jesse named her daughter after me, or Emily named her daughter after me. I just rolled my eyes, like, just like a wet noodle slapped me in the face and ruined it. And then that moment is the impetus for Jesse learning her lesson, apparently, in this movie, even though she doesn't, but learning her lesson in this movie that, oh, maybe it's okay that kids grow out of their love for toys. Maybe that's okay. And, we just need to be there for the kids at the right time for as long as we can. And I have to believe that I was. She says the entire lesson blatantly, outright, like, bleh, pukes it out onto you. And then within seconds after saying that, it's back to the plot where she's desperate to repair the relationship that she has with Bonnie. Like, she learned nothing. So they have this whole scene, which, again, like, in its own right, like, on its own merits, like, in a capsule, everything up to the point where Jesse blatantly says that Emily's daughter's named after her is wonderful. Seeing the name on the tree, looking down, seeing the time capsule, digging up the time capsule, opening it, seeing the photo. I was bawling, dude. And I was like, oh, thank God I didn't leave the theater because I got to see this, you know? And then instantly it's ruined. And the lesson is not learned. And all of that emotional work that just got done is pointless. Because that climax to the story, to like Jesse learning this, means nothing. That is the end of Act 2 of the movie. Act 3 still has to happen. So they like short dick this revelation at the end of Act 2, and then Act 3 still has to happen because they have to have their chase sequence. They have to like justify the existence of Buzz Lightyear in the movie, and like they have to do all this stuff with this tablet still or whatever. We'll get there. But like it just like it's like they had this idea like, oh, but wouldn't it be such a great moment for Jessie if she learned that her previous owner named her daughter after her? Yes. That's an incredible moment. That is such a great idea. And in Pixar's better days, that would have been the entire premise of the film. If they had like made it like a Jessie spin-off movie or like done a short about Jessie, which I just think it should have been a short. But in a better Pixar world, before whatever the frick this is, they wouldn't have had to outright say any of it, first of all. They wouldn't have had to like vomit the lesson onto you because they think you're too retarded to understand it by context. Even the kid. Okay. I watched this movie with like, there was like 4 other families in the theater, and the kids were crying. I'm talking like 4 to 8-year-old kids were crying before Jessie said anything in that scene. And so they all understood it. It's like, you didn't have to spell it out for them. They get it. And yeah, so that just really pissed me off. Because even the only scene in the movie worth watching, which is that scene where Jessie learns this information, is ruined immediately. So that was the moment. Like, I had already been like, I'm going to walk out of this theater. Like, there's like this whole, in Act 2 of the movie, there's this whole sequence where Jessie is in her old house with these like early 2000s digital toys, learning tools, whatever. And I was just so bored, and I hated the characters so much. I was like, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. I had already sat through some of the Buzz Lightyear segments. I had already watched Woody and Buzz be like put off to the side and be completely irrelevant in this film, like humiliated the entire movie. And I was like, I can't do this. Like, I gotta leave. But I was like, you know what? I'll stick it out. Maybe it all comes together. Maybe there's like this resolution. And then that sequence happens, and I'm like, okay, I get it. Like they're figuring it out. Like maybe like all the setup was worth it to get to the climax of the film, and like they pull it all together. Nope. They shoehorn this wonderful scene into the movie, immediately ruin it, and then it's back to the crap. Literally, by the way. So let's back it up. Since I had my rant about the Jessie segment. The point is, Jessie doesn't learn anything, even though she should have already learned this lesson. Whatever. So they're at Bonnie's house. Buzz wants to marry Jessie. That's his entire character for the whole movie. He has nothing else to do. Bonnie is like antisocial, which is very weird because Bonnie likes playing with toys. And so she has this imagination, and she like clearly is very, creative, and, just like she's a kid who seems like she would have a fairly easy time using toys to make friends, right? But she doesn't. So she is very shy and she has a really hard time making friends. And especially like these kids across the street, she is like really struggling to talk to them. And she doesn't really understand why. And I mean, that's part of growing up. You know, she's like, I think she's supposed to be 8 in this movie. Uh, like I get it. It's hard to make friends, especially if you're like a naturally shy, introverted person who escapes into these other worlds that you've created for yourself because they're more comfortable and more exciting. So, I mean, it's all that's all good. So her parents buy her this lily pad, this tablet thing, which is like in all the trailers. It's on the poster. Obviously, this is like a main character of the movie, or at least it should be. Lily pad immediately is the Buzz Lightyear replacement for this film if you're looking at Toy Story 1 as the equivalent. So Jesse is Woody, Lilypad is Buzz. So Jesse is afraid that Lilypad is going to take all of Bonnie's attention, which at the beginning, obviously, that's exactly what happens. The tablet takes all of Bonnie's attention. Her parents tell her she can have the entire first day to figure out how to use it, but then they're going to implement time limits that never gets re-explored later. Bonnie never pushes back on those time limits, which should have been the most obvious thing to do, but she never does. There's never any conflict between Bonnie and her parents in regards to the tablet, which seems like the most obvious missed opportunity ever, and is why at the beginning of this review I said this movie is somehow both mean-spirited and toothless, because we get this like really depressing sequence of events for Bonnie. Like she is miserable for like the entire film, and just like constantly being blindsided, and she is like insulted by the other kids, and like it's sad, man. But like all of that feels just mean-spirited. And Jesse also just comes off as like aggressive and abrasive without the balancing that Woody has in the first movie. So in Toy Story 1, the reason why all of this works is because Woody is a good guy. And all the other toys trust him, and he's a good leader, and he has a genuine love for Andy. And yeah, he's flawed. He's angry. He's clearly not even giving Buzz a chance. There's conflict. That's the entire conceit of the first film, but at the end of the day, Woody is likable and respectable. You get this sense that like his heart's in the right place, you know. Jessie feels selfish in this movie. Extremely selfish. She just feels like, again, she should have learned all of this already, first of all. But then the fact that she hasn't, and that it's at all of the other toys' expense, including Buzz, is really just sad. Like, she basically, at one point, shortly after this, tells all of the other toys to piss off, including Buzz, and says, like, no, you have to stay here. I'm going to go take care of it. And she, like, buggers off. You'd think that, like, after having built relationships with all of these toys over the last 15 years, and especially with Buzz, and after learning the lesson that Woody learned, which is you have to trust your friends to help you. This is like the entire central premise of Toy Story 2, that she would have learned any of this, but she doesn't. She is completely blinded by her rage and her selfishness, and she has to fix it all herself. And she thinks she's just going to do everything on her own. It's like, again, this is going back on like years of character development for Jessie, first of all. And second of all, it puts all of these other toys on the back burner. So all of these characters that we've grown to love and spent time with do nothing in this movie. They literally sit there and they wait for Jessie to do everything. And there's actually a line at the end of the movie that like made me, I was like I actually choked because I was so irritated by it. I'll just tell you. At the very end of the movie, Woody, who has been completely useless and done nothing the entire time, is leaving Bonnie's house to rejoin Bo Peep and Duke Kaboom and all these other characters that were in Toy Story 4 to go back to doing his thing. And he literally says out loud, and I'm not joking, yeah, I was just following Jessie's lead. It's like the most insulting, like I hate to do this because again, I'm gonna sound like one of those like manosphere idiots, but like it's the most like cuck bullcrap. It drove me crazy. I was so angry. I mean, I had just watched this awful film all the way up to this point, but then Woody like completely has all of his agency removed. He is routinely humiliated, insulted, and tortured the whole movie. And then at the end, he's like, yep, Jessie's the main character, guys. I'm a useless cuck. And he goes back to Bo Peep, who already had this exact thing in Toy Story 4, where she was like the central character. I was like, you've got to be joking me. This is the most heavy-handed, like, feminist crap. They didn't need to do it. That's the thing. I wouldn't have minded so much if, like, the movie had just ended with Woody buggering off and saying, like, bye, guys, it was fun to have another cute adventure with you. But he had to say that. And what the worst part of it really is that he was following Jessie's lead. Everyone is following Jessie's lead the entire movie, and she does everything wrong. Like, she's again selfish and entirely focused on her own feelings and has no regard for anyone else throughout the entire movie. You would think that if they're going to have this Buzz storyline where he is like desperate to propose to Jessie, that one of the ways that they could get Jessie to come to this conclusion that, oh, maybe I've been selfish and maybe I should have been spending more time like having the other toys involved and being a part of this, is by overcoming that through the proposal with Buzz. But that doesn't happen either. That entire storyline comes to a complete thud during this chase sequence, which again was like completely pointless. Whatever. So Lily Pad decides that she's going to make Bonnie some friends because Jessie has been an abject failure at doing this, which is totally fair, by the way. Jessie is not in charge of and should not be involved in Bonnie making friends with other kids. I want to emphasize this because I think this is really important. The toys in Toy Story movies have always been the central characters of the story, and the character growth that happens has always been the toys' character growth. Okay? That's the first thing. The second thing is the toys were never trying to solve a problem for the humans. Okay? The toys are always trying to solve an internal problem with themselves. This is extremely important to understand. These movies have always been centered on the toys and how the toys have problems within their ranks and how they overcome those. It's about the toys' insecurities. It's about the toys learning lessons. right? It's about their stories. This movie is trying to shoehorn in character development for Bonnie. So the entire like forward momentum for Jesse in this movie is centered around the fact that Bonnie is this introverted kid who can't make friends. And so Jesse's trying to solve this problem. But that is immediately wrong for Toy Story. That is not what Toy Story is about. It is not about the toys solving problems for the kids. It is about the toys solving problems for themselves. Right? They don't have the power or ability to fix this problem for Bonnie. And because she's tried repeatedly and she's failed every time. And the lesson really should have been for Jessie that she just needs to, and again, she has learned this already, and she learns it later in the movie, that she just needs to be there for Bonnie when she is needed. And that she, as long as Bonnie has them to come back to and to play with, that she has that comfort. That's the best they can do. They are toys. And all of this should have been known before this movie even started, or learned during the movie and like had some finality to it. But neither of those things are true. Obviously, Jessie doesn't realize this at the beginning of the movie because she's immediately trying to solve this problem she has no power to solve whatsoever for Bonnie. And then later, when she has this supposed realization in the tree sequence where she's like, maybe we just need to be there for our kids at the right time. And I just have to believe that we were there when we needed to be and that they love us all the same and it doesn't matter. That should have been the moment where the movie said, okay, lesson learned, we move on now. But that doesn't stick. And it's not learned. Like, Jessie immediately goes back to her original thing, which is trying to like solve this friend situation for Bonnie. One of the reasons that made me so angry is because Inside Out 2, I watched when it came out a few years ago, and that movie plays this exact plot out sublimely. It's perfect. The way that the emotions are trying to solve Riley's friendship problem, and the way that like anxiety becomes the villain of that film, sort of, and like the very real way that those emotions intertwine with Riley's struggle to have and keep friends in Inside Out 2 is perfect. I love Inside Out 2. I actually like it better than the first movie for a lot of reasons. But one of the main reasons is because it's a story about Riley, and the emotions are the vehicles by which we get to experience that story. But it all works. It's all cohesive. It all fits. The premise is good. The conceit is good. And then the payoff is really good at the end. And critically, the emotions, their job is to try to help Riley, to figure out how to get Riley to be happy and have friends. That's their purpose. Okay. They're like within her brain doing this for her. That is what the emotions are for. That is not what the toys are for in Toy Story. It's like they tried to slap the same premise that they had from Inside Out 2 onto a Toy Story movie. But it doesn't fit on a Toy Story movie. Toy Story is not about the humans. It's about the toys. It's Toy Story. It's not Human Story with toys. Okay? Inside Out is a story about Riley. And the emotions are, again, like the characters and the vehicle by which we experience Riley's story. And it makes it easier for like it's a kids movie, so it makes it easier for kids to like sort of comprehend what's going on in their own brain and in Riley's brain as they go through these insecurities of life. That's why Inside Out works. Toy Story is not that. Toy Story is supposed to be about the toys and their struggles, not the humans. So when this movie tries to make the entire central conceit not about how tech is coming in to replace toys, that's really not what the movie's about. That's what the movie advertises itself to be about, but that's not what it's about. That's how it sells itself. That's what I thought it was going to be. That's one of the reasons I was excited about it. But that part of it is completely toothless and spineless and has no bearing on the plot whatsoever. Really, the movie is about Bonnie being a shy, introverted kid that has a hard time making friends, and how the toys are trying to fix that problem for her. That's what the movie's about. But there are many problems with this. There are so many problems. Okay, problem number one. As I said, Toy Story is not about the humans. It's never been about the humans. It's about the toys. It's about how the toys are reacting to and dealing with the real life consequences of humans' actions and how they grow up, right? That's what Toy Story is. It's about the toys. It's not about the humans. But this movie focuses so much on Bonnie and Bonnie's emotions. That's the first problem. The second problem is, if you're going to do that, you need to have Bonnie also grow over the course of the film. She needs to learn something. If you're going to have this movie be about Bonnie and her struggles, then she needs to have an arc. And you could have it be in such a way that Bonnie's arc is reflective of or like parallel to the arc of one of the toys. And that would maybe work. But it doesn't, because she doesn't learn anything. Bonnie gets an out in this movie. So what essentially happens is Lilypad tries to make Bonnie some friends by connecting her with these other kids that have their own tablets. But it turns out these kids are awful to her and insulting because Bonnie still plays with toys. And so they're like insulting her and making her feel bad about herself and blah, blah, blah. So Bonnie like is really sad. And again, part of the problem I had with this movie is that it's just depressing. Like Bonnie is just so beat down the whole movie. It's hard to watch. It's really mean-spirited. And I don't really know why they went this direction. It's very odd. Ultimately, I think what I don't really like talking about what movies should have done, because it's probably better to talk about what the movie is and criticize it based on that. But I really think what this movie should have been about, and what I thought it was going to be about, was Bonnie gets this tablet, and as a result of getting the tablet, she stops playing with her toys, and then the toys have to reconcile with this idea that they're outdated now, that like toys are becoming irrelevant, and that like modern technology is replacing toys and sort of taking over, and how they were going to deal with the consequences of that. That, even though it's a retread really of the way that Woody deals with Buzz's introduction in Toy Story 1, it's high tech. Space Ranger comes in and he's the cool toy and like replaces Woody, and how he comes to grips with that. That's really what the movie should have been about, and what I thought the movie was going to be. That's not what the movie's about. The movie is not about the way that the toys deal with the technology entering their lives. I think it started that way. There's like roots that are that like they kind of plant, or seeds that they start to plant in the movie to tackle this. But by the second act of the movie, that's completely out the window. like it doesn't ever come to any sort of conclusion. It doesn't ever have anything to say about technology or the way that it influences the toys. Again, it's about Bonnie. So it's really about the way that the technology is influencing Bonnie. But if you wanted to make that movie, you should have just made that movie. Like, you could have made a completely separate film about a young girl who struggles to make friends and then tries to use technology to bridge that gap, but then fails because the technology is not sufficient enough to help create those relationships. That's an interesting premise for a movie, and honestly a great premise for a kids movie. And that's why I thought this movie might have been okay, but they abandoned this premise completely within the first, like, by the end of the first act. And it's very weird. It's like the movie like started being written with this as the premise, and then it kind of did a like 180-degree shift and completely changed and went to a different movie. I really think that because there's like the Buzz Lightyear stuff at the beginning with the wireless connection to each other. They're like clearly setting up this idea that like they have this wireless connection. Then they set up this lily pad stuff. And then in act 2 of the movie, Lily basically disappears. And the movie writes itself into this completely separate plot that doesn't fit and doesn't make sense. And like we'll get there, but it's very odd. I don't really get. They like had this idea for this movie, like, okay, we're gonna have it be about like the dangers of technology, and I think the movie could have been good if they had focused it on how the toys deal with the, the technology coming in and what the repercussions of that are and how they grow and learn something as a result of that happening. But that's not what the movie is. It abandons that premise within like 30 minutes. And it's weird because they really set it up. Like, Jesse ends up in like a neighbor's yard at one point, and there's all of these new characters. We'll get to that in a second, but there's all these new characters, and they're all freaking out because tech came into this kid's home, and now the kid doesn't play with them anymore, and it's like complete ego death. Like they're useless now, and they're all like freaking out about the dangers of technology. And then like Woody and all of the characters from Toy Story 4 are like saving this other new character from this tree, and he's freaking out about how technology has taken over and how, kids don't play with toys anymore. And so they set all this up, and then it fizzles. They never come back to it. It's very weird. So Lily decides to make Bonnie some friends using this like app or whatever. And Lily ends up getting Bonnie invited to this sleepover. And Jessie, in her infinite wisdom, decides to pack herself into the suitcase that Bonnie's taking with her to the sleepover. And then when she gets there, she has Jessie and Bullseye with her. And then the kids make fun of her when she has her toys with her. And so she puts them back she gives them back to her dad and puts them back in the car and grabs the lily pad and goes to the sleepover with the lily pad. So Jessie immediately has screwed up, okay, by, again, sort of forcing herself into this situation, which is basically what she does the whole movie. So she tries to force herself into the situation, immediately gets punished for it. Then she tries to like exit the car to go back to the sleepover. So again, she's learned nothing. She tries to go back to the sleepover, and that's when the old couple picks her up and drops her off at Emily's old house where Jessie used to be with Emily in the distant past, decades ago. So she gets there, right? Well, now she's like very far away from Bonnie, and she's trying to find a way to get back to Bonnie. And then this is when the movie completely goes off the rails. Up to this point, the movie was really about, and should have stayed about, the technology lily pad coming in, replacing the toys, and how that was going to affect how the toys move forward in life, right? But the movie completely abandons that, and it becomes a story about Jessie at her old house. And I it is really difficult to even start to talk about what the frick is going on in this part of the movie. It is so wildly inconsistent. It was boggling me. Halfway through Act 2 is when I was like ready to leave because I was like, what am I watching? So she gets to this house. Well, she gets taken by this pig to, it's a farmhouse. She gets taken by this pig into this dollhouse outside at night. And inside this dollhouse is a bunch of new toys. I'm going to pause for a second. This movie introduces so many new characters. It is a whirlwind. I cannot keep up. I don't know any of their names. I don't care about any of them. And it tries to bring back all these characters from like Toy Story 4, some of which don't even speak. Key and Peele's characters from Toy Story 4 are in the movie for about 3 seconds. They don't even speak. Duke Kaboom has like a line. Bo Peep has like a line. Each of the original toys, Rex, Slinky, Ham, Mr. Potato Head, they get like a line each. Rex has one of the best lines in the movie. It's like the only self-aware moment in the whole movie where he goes, "Extinction, not again." And that was like probably the only point in the movie where I genuinely laughed because I was like, yeah, again. Because that like emphasized exactly what I was thinking, was like, oh, this is a retread of exactly the same thing we've already learned over and over again in this series up to this point. Anyway, he gets like the only good line in the whole movie. So, but like all these characters get like one line. Again, Jessie ends up in like a neighbor's yard. There's like 5 new toys in that yard. They all get like a line each, and then they're gone forever. We'd never see them again or hear from them again. There's there's all these toys in this dollhouse. Like none of them are relevant or matter. But worse than that, let's just get to the point of the dollhouse scene. She's in this dollhouse. All these toys are like, we're waiting for Blaze to come back. The kid's name is Blaze, by the way, this girl who lives at Emily's house. It literally spelled Blaze. Anyway, this is a stupid name. Okay, so Blaze lives there, and she apparently used to play with these toys. And then now the toys are like outside in this dollhouse, and they haven't seen her in a long time. Jessie goes like, how long has it been since Blaze came out to play with you? And they don't answer. But like the implication is that it's been a long time and that Blaze doesn't play with toys anymore. Okay. This is a problem. This is a major problem because Blaze is supposed to be this character that, like Bonnie, has this childlike wonder about her, that has an imagination, that plays with toys. There's a point like 5 minutes later in the movie where Jessie like sees that Blaze is this person that loves her toys and plays, and she like has all of her toys in her room still. And so it doesn't even make any sense that all these other toys are outside in this dollhouse being like, oh, she hasn't played with us in forever. Bro, then why is Jessie like immediately seeing Blaze as this like great friend opportunity for Bonnie because she has this imagination and plays with her toys? That is completely antithetical to what you just set up as a premise, which is that these toys out in the dollhouse haven't seen her in forever. It doesn't make any sense. And then they like try to course correct. So then the most egregiously stupid character in the entire Toy Story franchise gets introduced, which is Conan O'Brien plays this character that is this like potty training digital device. has 3 buttons on the front and a screen. And it takes batteries. And I don't even know how it works, but essentially it's supposed to like help kids get potty trained. Okay, it's like a digital tool by which kids use to help them potty train. No idea how that works, but it is what it is. So he is alive. He has sentience. He's conscious, and so the thing you immediately think is, well, he was a toy, ostensibly, of Blaze, because otherwise he wouldn't. First of all, he wouldn't want to go back to her, and second of all, he wouldn't be conscious. So like, he's essentially a toy, right? And he basically convinces Jesse somehow that he's necessary for her to get into the house because she needs to save Bullseye and get back to Bonnie, because Bullseye had been picked up by Blaze earlier and taken into the house. And so somehow this potty training character convinces Jesse. I don't even remember how, because it's completely useless and pointless. Convinces her that she needs him to get into the house. So she takes him into the house, even though he's completely useless, and also is acting drunk, by the way, which is, this is one of those moments where I was like kind of like gagging and being like, why is this in this movie? So Conan O'Brien voices this character, and he's animated like he's drunk. And I had to stop for a moment and be like, what is going on? Why is this in this movie? And at first, my gut reaction was like, why are they putting a drunk character in a kid's movie? But then I thought about it and I was like, well, in Toy Story 1, there's that sequence where Buzz is Mrs. Nesbit and he's drinking the tea. And he sort of acts drunk in that sequence. And so I was like, all right, well, there is precedent for this in a Toy Story movie, but it feels so much different. Again, it feels more mean-spirited. Conan O'Brien's character is not a good person. He's actually a lot like Jesse in that he's very selfish, manipulative, crappy. Sorry. And so when he's drunk, it comes off as like evil and weird and like shouldn't be in a kid. Like, kids should not be seeing that. I was like watching it and like kind of trying to see if any of the other kids or parents were reacting to it. Nobody was reacting in the whole theater. Nobody thought it was funny. There was like dead silence during this portion of the movie, and it just felt really wrong. Like in my gut, I was like, I don't like that. And when I thought about it after I came home and I was comparing it to the Buzz scene in Toy Story 1, I think there's basically two main differences. Number one, Buzz in that scene is a broken shell of a man and has just had total ego death, and his arm is broken off, and he has completely fallen into existential depression. And this ritual of him drinking tea with these toys with Sid's sister is totally humiliating to him. And the whole thing serves as a way to emphasize how low Buzz feels in that moment. And the drunkenness that he exudes by pretending to drink the tea comes off as him drowning his sorrows and trying to make himself kind of seem crazy in order to like sort of remove any accountability for having to feel what he's feeling. And so it's really a lesson in how alcohol is bad and how it turns you into a mean, angry, bad person. And then Woody has to spend the next few minutes of that movie basically like slapping him out of it and trying to like return him back to his normal self. So there's like a real reason for that to happen in that moment. It's not random. It's not played as a joke. I mean, it kind of is, but it's really meant to be a a moment of character growth for Buzz. And it also helps you feel like Woody cares about Buzz. So there's like lots of reasons why it matters that that scene happened, and it doesn't feel out of place. I mentioned earlier that in a good movie, some of the ickier moments, some of the plot holes, some of the things that aren't necessarily the best in the movie, you can forgive or ignore, or you don't notice them at all because the movie's so good. And in Toy Story 1, this is obviously the case in a number of sequences, but in Toy Story 5, it's not a good movie. And so the other reason why this feels so wrong is because like the whole movie up to this point has already felt bad and mean-spirited and depressing and crummy. And then they introduce this character who is drunk for no good reason. He's not drunk because he's like trying to drown his sorrows like Buzz was in Toy Story 1. He's not drunk for any reason other than the fact that he's out of battery and they're playing off him being drunk as a joke. But while he's drunk, he's like falling all over Jesse. It's embarrassing. He's a jerk about it. And the whole thing just feels mean and gross. And I hated it. Like I was like, oh. Like genuinely, I felt disgusted watching that scene. It's really bad. And you know, I don't know what the point was of that. It really made me feel uncomfortable. And you could tell it made the parents in the room uncomfortable too, by the way. Like I said, nobody was reacting to this. They're clearly trying to make people laugh in that scene, and nobody was laughing. And I could feel the tension. Like parents are like doing this in their seats, like kind of shifting a little bit. Because the fear is like, oh God, is this character going to be like this the whole time? It's really quite mean-spirited. It's very, very uncomfortable. So anyway, Jesse takes this character into the house. Thank goodness they find some batteries to put in this character so he doesn't have to act drunk anymore. But it doesn't really help. He's still a jerk. He's still this unredeemably unfunny, just annoying character that I just hated. I didn't want to see him. Every time he was on screen, I was like, just get him off my screen. I hate him. Which is not how you want one of the main characters of the story to be, unless he gets redeemed in the end, which he absolutely doesn't. Okay. So they go into this drawer, they find some batteries for this poop trainer thing, and they find two other gadgets in there. One of them is called Atlas. He's this like alligator mouth head thing that has like a GPS inside. And then the other one is a digital camera. So these three characters all know each other. They were all like present during Blaze growing up in this house. And then she basically grew out of them because she didn't like need them anymore or whatever. So they all got put away. They all have to, in order to like connect to each other digitally, they all have to connect with a wire. So they have these like this like daisy chain going between the three of them in order to connect to each other. But somehow, all three of these characters also have access to wireless internet connection everywhere. Even though these are like old gadgets from like the early 2000s, they somehow have access to internet connection literally anywhere they go, not even just on Wi-Fi at home, but like they're literally moving in like a vehicle out on the freeway and they have access to it. and yet they all have to be daisy chained together to communicate with each other. And in my mind, I'm thinking, like, what is going on here? Like, this is very strange. And I'm thinking, like, okay, maybe like they're gonna talk about how these characters have to be connected to each other, but like maybe they'll bring back the Buzz Lightyears from earlier in the movie and they're all wirelessly connected, so there'll be something there. Nope, none of that comes up. They never address the fact that they have to be wired together for some reason, or that they like sort of are ostensibly a single unit. And also, somehow these three characters are able to like take and send digital photos across the web to these tablets or this like cloud. And also they can type even though there's no keyboard anywhere amongst the three of them. The potty trainer thing has 3 buttons on the front. That's it. And so it just makes no sense. It's like this huge logical inconsistency that like really threw me off. I was like, what is going on? What? And I don't really know why they exist. Like, so it just keeps getting worse. So these characters are like pointless, first of all. They're also unfunny, unlikable, whatever. They're just there. And Jessie basically realizes she got duped, that she didn't need the potty trainer thing to get into the house, because of course she didn't. And the potty trainer thing is like just trying to get back to the house to like be with Blaze. So the premise is that this potty trainer thing has a deep connection with this girl, that they like had a bond. Okay? Which is the exact bond that any human character in Toy Story has with their toy. Okay? That is what they're trying to communicate here, is that the connection between Blaze and this potty trainer thing is the same as the connection between a human and a toy, and that he's desperate to get back to her, because for the same reason all toys are desperate to get back to their humans. Okay, so that is what it is. Except that 2 seconds later, there's this sequence where Jessie has to explain to these ostensibly toys what play is, and like what a toy is, and like how that connection is supposed to work. What? If okay, we know, when we knew it before this, but we know from Toy Story 4 that what brings these toys to life is the fact that they are toys. It's their connection to the human being. That's why Forky starts as nothing and becomes a toy, right? He gets this like spark of life. So this potty trainer thing is, it's not really a toy. Like, it kind of is, but it's not really a toy. He becomes a toy. He is a toy, and has this connection with Blaze because Blaze loves him. And so it's pretty clear that very early on, this connection between this potty trainer and the GPS and the digital camera and Blaze was strong enough that they wanted to get back to her to continue this relationship. But then Jessie has to explain to them what play is, when they've spent time with a young developing child that clearly had an imagination and personified these devices into toys. It doesn't make any sense. And also, in that same sequence where Jessie is like trying to teach these gadgets what play is, she comes off as really creepy. She's like watching Blaze and she's like, oh yeah, she plays. And it comes off as like really like borderline perverted. Like, it's really creepy. And then she like basically gets the gadgets out into the hallway and like tricks Blaze into playing with them, which just solidifies the premise that Blaze is a kid with this imagination that likes playing with toys, which defeats the purpose of having this dollhouse outside where there's all these toys that she doesn't play with. And it just, none of it makes any sense. So, okay. Jesse, it just keeps getting worse. This whole act is so abhorrently stupid. So somehow, again, through leaps in logic that are unfathomably stupid, Jesse and the camera and the other two devices, including this potty trainer device, take a picture of Jesse and Bullseye and send it to Lilypad. And at this point, I'm like, this movie is stupid. How did they do that? First of all. Second of all, they do this, and then we jump back to Bonnie's room where Buzz is sitting there doing nothing. And earlier in the movie, I should have mentioned this already, but I forgot because it's so pointless. Earlier in the movie, in the first act, Jesse goes to the closet and takes out the walkie-talkie and calls Woody and asks Woody for help. And this is problematic for two reasons. Number one, she had just made Buzz her deputy and like tried to basically build Buzz up as like the leader of the secondary leader of the toys. And then she cucks him by calling Woody. And Buzz is understandably kind of upset by this. He's like, why would you need to call Woody? Like, I'm right here. Like, let me help you. But Jesse ignores him, is really like quite mean to him. This is another example of this movie being really mean-spirited. And like lies to him and like decides that she needs Woody's help. Well, then she buggers off. Then Woody shows up at the house and he's then emasculated and insulted by all the toys. So he like shows up, he's got a poncho, they call it a dress, whatever. Then he like takes off his hat and he's got like a bald spot, like a shiny spot on the back of his head. They all make fun of him for that. They call him old. He like walks up and has like a beer belly somehow, which makes zero sense. His anatomy shouldn't be changing. He's a freaking toy. But he shows up, he's got like a beer belly, and they like play it all off like he's like this old useless man that can't do anything. And then he proceeds to do exactly nothing the entire movie. So like he's totally emasculated. Buzz is totally emasculated. They are utterly useless through the whole movie. They try to play it off like it's a joke. Like these characters are just like stupid men that can't do anything. And it really rubbed me the wrong way. And I think it's going to rub a lot of people the wrong way. It's just another example of why this movie feels very like mean and crummy. So anyway, Lilypad's there, whatever. She's like trying to get Bonnie to make friends with these other girls, whatever. Buzz and Woody decide they're going to interrogate Lily. So they unplug her battery to make her delirious and drunk like the freaking potty trainer thing from earlier, because apparently toys know how to do that. They know how to like make someone have low battery and then be drunk. So they're gonna like basically truth serum her by making her drunk and making her tell them what happened to Jesse and Bullseye, because they're like really concerned about Jesse and Bullseye, even though Lily at that point has no idea what happened to Jesse and Bullseye. All she knows is they ended up back in Dad's car when Lily went to the sleepover. So she has nothing to even tell Buzz and Woody. She could have at any point been like, she should be here. I don't know. Like she got back in the car, but she like doesn't. So they have to like interrogate her. That's its own logical inconsistency. They decide to interrogate her. She like has low battery. They start to interrogate her. And then they realize by saying her name, by saying, "Hey, Lily," they can control her like you can control Siri or Alexa. So this is a major problem because they just broke open the entire
premise of this film. At any point, like, I'm pretty sure earlier in the movie, I'd have to go back and look. I'm not going to because the movie sucks. I'm not going to watch it again. But I'm pretty sure earlier in the movie, there are multiple characters that call her Lily to her face, and she doesn't go into this like Siri interface, okay? But she does in this scene for some reason. So Woody and Buzz start to realize that they can control what Lily does. Well, that destroys the entire like autonomy of her character because she's now ostensibly at the whim of anyone who says her name, which is stupid. But then they find out because somehow these ancient digital appliances magically sent this photo to the cloud. They find this photo in Lily's interface and realize where Jesse and Bullseye are. And this is also, by the way, how the high-tech buzzes find out too, because they apparently are connected to this, so they see this like photo and then they go, oh, Star Command, because Jesse's got a star on her. Anyway, it's so stupid. It's so stupid. So, Woody and Buzz, they're like going through whatever. Bonnie's parents see that Lily has this picture from who they believe is Blaze, saying, hey, I have your toys. Okay. Blaze, for the record, did not send this message. Okay. The toys sent it as Blaze, like posing as Blaze. But the parents think that it's Blaze sending the message. Whatever. So they are like, okay, we're going to, take Bonnie with us and we're going to go to Blaze's house and we're going to get the toys back. And Bonnie is like genuinely concerned at this point. She's like, oh, my toys. Like, I've been wondering, like, where Jesse and Bullseye, like, she like looks through the toys that she has in the garage. She doesn't see Jesse and Bullseye there. She's like, so she's like really concerned. So she's like ready to go. They go to Blaze's house to pick up Jesse and Bullseye. Well, on that trip, there's a message like a group chat message thread or whatever. And that picture of Jesse and Bullseye that got sent to like this cloud also got sent to all of Bonnie's friends on the lily pad system, the pond or whatever it's called, somehow. So they all see this picture of Jesse and Bullseye, and they all start, again, really mean-spiritedly and like evilly making fun of Bonnie during the car trip to go get Jesse and Bullseye. Well, they get to the house, and by the way, the entire premise of this up to this point is that Jesse thinks that Blaze would be a great friend for Bonnie because Blaze has the same like imagination and wants to play with toys the same way Bonnie does. So she thinks that they'll make really good friends. So she's like really excited about this. She's like, oh, they're going to meet. It's going to be great. Well, they show up. Bonnie and her mom go up to the door. Blaze comes down with Jesse and Bullseye. And then Bonnie is like really upset because she just got made fun of by all of these girls in this group chat. So she rejects Jesse and Bullseye and says like, I don't want them anymore. You can keep them, to Blaze, and then walks off. Woody and Buzz hitch a ride on the back of the van to Blaze's house. So they're there now. And this is when the Buzz Lightyears also show up. So everyone's kind of conglomerating on Blaze's house. So Jessie learns nothing from this, is convinced. She is completely convinced that she can figure this out and make this work. And she's like, I'm not giving up. But then like instantly out of nowhere, she decides, oh, I'm not worth it. I'm a bad toy. It's me. Like, I'm the problem. Even though she absolutely should have learned this lesson forever ago, that it's not about her. It's about other things out of her control, other circumstances in these kids' lives. but she's like, it's me, I'm the problem. So she buggers off to the tree. And this is when the tree sequence happens where she finds out that Emily's kid is named Jesse and they used to live at the house and buried the time capsule, blah, 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 blah. Okay. But while that's all happening, Woody and Buzz and all of the high-tech buzzes show up at this house. Well, they have to have something to do. So the movie like forces this sequence where the buzzes find Woody and start torturing him by like feeding him to this pig. And then our Buzz infiltrates their ranks and tells them all that they're toys and they instantly accept it and everything's fine. A completely pointless scene. No reason for it. No reason at all. Then they go to the house and this girl, Blaze, is a horse girl. And so they see all these toy horses up on her racks in her room, which again just tells me that she respects her toys and wants to like display them, whatever. So they like get on all these horses and they ride off into the hill. And then they encounter Jessie, like as Jessie is figuring out that she, like that as a toy, she just needs to be there for her human for as long as she can, and that she just needs to accept her place in the world, and that she was there for Emily for exactly the amount of time she needed to be, and that's okay. And she ostensibly learns this lesson that she already should have learned and that every toy should have learned in the first 3 movies. Okay, whatever. But then again, immediately that is completely out the window. That entire lesson she just apparently learned is gone because then they're right back to the mission. So Lily is with Bonnie. The lily pad is with Bonnie. They go to like an ice cream shop after Bonnie leaves Blaze's house. Bonnie's all depressed or whatever. And Mom, like, puts away the group chat. Lily sees that Bonnie is really sad and that she messed up by sort of trying to fabricate this friendship with all these other girls. So Lily feels guilty for the, emotional distress that she is sort of tangentially inflicted on Bonnie. So she decides in a moment of self-sacrifice to dump herself in a donation bin, which gets put on a truck. Which is like, we've done this exact sequence where like they're chasing a truck. Anyway, so Lily gets on this truck. So, again, somehow all of the little digital devices, the potty trainer thing, the Atlas thing, and the camera thing, can all communicate wirelessly with Lily, even though they all have to be wired to connect to each other. And apparently, like, I don't know, it's all totally stupid. It makes no sense. But anyway, they're apparently able to connect with Lily. So they, like, basically tell Lily, like, hey, we're going to come get you. We're going to, like, save you because it's not your fault, bro, is basically the premise. Like, anyway, so they need Lily to reestablish the connection between Blaze and Bonnie, which is oy. It's like the movie doesn't know how ironic this entire situation is, that they're like having to go save this tablet, this digital thing, to reestablish the connection between Blaze and Bonnie because these two characters are supposedly better than having to use technology and they are going to actually use their imaginations. But they cannot do that unless they are connected to each other using a digital format. It's like the irony and like the crappy writing of it is so palpable. So Jessie and Buzz and Woody and all the other Buzzes, and by the way, Woody and Buzz have done nothing this whole movie. They're completely useless and emasculated the entire movie. It's insulting. So they like get on all these horses, all of Blaze's horses. Blaze never once is like, where did all my horses go? They bugger off to go chase down this donation truck that Lily is in. And Lily, the whole time she's in the truck, is like taking pictures of street signs and sending them to this potty trainer thing. And they're like typing back and forth to each other. It makes no sense, but whatever, it's in the movie. So they go and they chase down this truck. And they get in the truck and they're trying to save Lily. They're like, what are we going to do? We can't get out of here. And then this Deus Ex Machina happens where Lily sees this QR code on the back of all of these Buzz Lightyears, all these high-tech buzzes. She scans it. Somehow, she magically updates the buzzes wirelessly, and then they all turn into drones and can fly. And they try to play it off like it's a payoff for Buzz and Woody, because they like repeat the line. Buzz repeats the line like, now this is flying. Which is another, like, just frankly gag-inducing and insulting moment. And like, I rolled my eyes. I was like, you got to be freaking kidding me with this crap. In a better movie, that might have been a nice moment, but in this movie, it felt like the most insulting thing in the entire third act of the movie. So all these high-tech buzzes can fly. So they grab most of the horses and Buzz and Woody and Jesse, and they start flying off. Well, at this point in time, the movie realizes that they have to get a payoff for this Buzz and Woody marriage, or Buzz and Jesse marriage thing. So they're like, crap, we gotta throw this in now. So like in the middle of this sequence with no setup whatsoever, Buzz decides he's gonna propose to Jesse, and then Jesse cuts him off, doesn't let him finish, and basically says, yeah, I knew you were going to do that the whole time. You're stuck with me, cowboy. And that's the end of it. It's this like flop. It's this resounding thud, just like everything else in the movie, where it just doesn't matter. None of it makes any difference. There's no payoff. So then the toys all get back to their respective places. Some of them are unaccounted for. We don't really know what happens to a lot of these toys. But essentially, Blaze shows back up at Bonnie's house with Jesse and Bullseye. And this is a problem because, once again, it is the toys that are the impetus for this happening. So the toys... okay, first of all, earlier, there's a message sequence between the, like, potty trainer thing and Lily Pad. And it's Jesse and Lily talking to each other in this chat. So the toys are talking to each other. There's a history of this chat. You can see it on Lily's screen. So if at any point the humans see this chat, they would see that it's the toys talking to each other. That's its own problem. The second problem is when Bonnie had initially gone to Blaze's house to go get Jesse and Bullseye, that again had all been orchestrated by the toys. But the parents just kind of don't, like, all the humans are just stupid, so they don't like realize what's going on. They're just going with it, and that's like all orchestrated by the toys. Well, this entire thing happens again when the toys orchestrate Blaze coming to Bonnie's house, again with no pretense. The parents don't know about it. The kids don't know about it. At no point are they communicating with each other. It's just the toys, but the humans just sort of do the thing. So Blaze shows up at Bonnie's house and she has Jesse and Bullseye. She's like, do you want your toys back? And Bonnie's like, no, dude, I already told you I don't want my toys back. And she's like, got Lily and stuff. So it's like the entire thing was going to happen again. It doesn't even matter. Well, then the supposed payoff of the movie, which doesn't land at all, is that Blaze is really quite nice and kind to Bonnie and like tries to play with the toys, and Bonnie realizes as Blaze is walking away that this might be a good opportunity to like make a friend. And so she like goes up and then they start playing together, and that's like the end of that arc of the story. But there's two problems with this. The first is I didn't buy it at all. And this is the main problem with actually most of this film, is that I didn't buy that Blaze and Bonnie were going to develop this relationship with each other. And when it did happen, it felt really forced and very weird. And like they didn't write it naturally at all. So it just comes off as like forced resolution for a conflict that like never should have existed in the first place, because it's hard to explain, but I just feel like, you know, when you watch a scene in a movie and it's supposed to be the big payoff sequence of the film, it's supposed to be like the resolution, and you watch it and you just are like, mm, eh, like I didn't feel anything. That's what this sequence is when Bonnie and Blaze get together and start playing with the toys. It's it feels wrong, and and again really forced. And it is made worse by the fact that shortly after this, Bonnie and Blaze are like playing out in the yard, and then these two neighbor kids who had been like completely averse to playing with Bonnie through the whole movie, they decide that looks fun. I want to come over and play too. And so it like removes that tension. And I get that like maybe they were trying to say like, well, if you get two kids to play with each other with toys, then that's going to sort of inspire other kids to like come and play with them. And like that's a nice sentiment, but it doesn't land. So it's pointless. So again, I keep coming back to like the Up intro, but like imagine if in the intro to Up, at the very end of that intro sequence when she dies and he's left alone, if he like immediately met another woman and then they fell in love and then the rest of the movie was about like their like relationship. It would have like completely destroyed the entire premise of the film, right? So like you have to like let these things sit, and also it has to be done in such a way that it feels meaningful. Part of the problem is because the rest of the movie is so egregiously terrible. Even if this last sequence where Bonnie and Blaze get together and start playing and they become friends, even if that sequence is good and feels hopeful and so on, it's soured by the fact that everything leading up to that point in the movie was either pointless, mean spirited, or so logically inconsistent that it draws you completely out of it. So the payoff is it just bleh, like it doesn't work. And I just felt like the movie completely wasted every opportunity it had given itself. There are no lessons learned here. You know? So uh, there I'm so angry. So there are no lessons learned in this movie. Bonnie learns nothing. about, you know, the way that the technology affects her. The parents learn nothing. There's no conflict between Bonnie and the lily pad, or between the parents and the lily pad. Literally all the way up to this point, like Bonnie has this really traumatic moment in the car on the way back from Blaze's house where she sees this group chat and all these kids are insulting her. And mom comes over and like turns off the group chat. And you would think that this would like lead to like some sort of revelation from Bonnie about the dangers of the lily pad and like how it's been affecting her negatively. But it doesn't, because a scene later, after the chase happens and everybody's back together, when Blaze shows up at Bonnie's house, Bonnie is like hugging the lily pad as she goes out to talk to Blaze. Like the lily pad is still her comfort. But the lily pad is like the reason why she's been so, well, it's not even the reason, but it is like obviously a contributing factor in why she was so depressed up to this point. So like she's not making that connection. The parents are like, okay, we'll turn off the group chat, but otherwise they don't impose any other restrictions on the technology. There's never a conversation had between the parents and Bonnie about the dangers of social media. There's never a conversation between the toys about it. So the central conceit of the film in the first act, which is like tech versus toys, is flubbed. There's nothing there. It's completely toothless. There's no message. There's no lesson. It's just blah. And they try to play it off like everything's okay because Bonnie and Blaze start playing with their toys and everything is fine. But it doesn't solve the problem, which is that this technology is still around, and they don't talk about how it's affecting Bonnie negatively, and the toys don't ever have to have this like real crisis of faith about it. They just get their happy ending where Bonnie still plays with them and stuff. And so like none of it feels earned. Like in every other Toy Story movie, there's some sort of shift at the end of the movie in the dynamic. Something changes. A lesson is learned, and something new happens. Or at the very least there's forward momentum. And like the consequences of everything that had happened in the movie make a difference in the way that all those characters are going to be moving forward. This movie doesn't do that. This movie takes everything that had happened in the entire movie and throws it away. And the toys get their happy ending where they still get to play with their owner. Jessie gets validated, even though she did nothing, by Bonnie and Blaze becoming friends, even though that entire conflict was like completely manufactured. Buzz and Jessie get married during this play sequence, but even that sequence is soured by this very strange choice at the end of that like wedding play sequence where Buzz apparently is already married to the Triceratops character, one of Bonnie's toys, and how like he's like basically cheating on her with Jessie. It is very strange, and I have absolutely no idea why they put that in there. Like if they wanted to have this wedding sequence between Jessie and Buzz and have them like finally, get together, admit their feelings for each other, that's fine. But even that like what should be the easiest emotional payoff in the entire movie is immediately sidewinded by this very strange choice to have these kids, these like 8 and 9 year old kids, throw in this story in their play about how Buzz is already married to this other toy and is cheating on them with Jet. It's very weird. And then the sequence that I already talked about that made me want to vomit happens, where Woody, who again has done absolutely nothing this entire film, goes back to his like team of toys, Duke Kaboom, Bo Peep, or whatever. And then he says like the most egregious line in the film, which is like, yeah, we were just following Jessie's lead, as if like she somehow won in this movie. Like she saved the day, even though she didn't do anything either. And she didn't learn anything. And so like what ends up happening is at the end of this movie, I felt betrayed. Like I've spent over 2 hours, which is longer than this movie is, ranting about how the movie just has so many problems. It is tonally inconsistent. It's mean and sad, and it's not hopeful. And there's no lessons learned. The Pixar moment is ruined immediately afterward, and also had nothing to do with the rest of the movie. And like that microcosm, if you like take it on its own and separate it from the film, it doesn't change anything. And there's no payoff. The characters just go back to status quo at the end of the movie. There's no dynamic shift at all. There's no logic in the film at all. And I say that in a series of movies that is about suspension of disbelief. I want you to understand this. Toy Story is literally about suspending disbelief and allowing your imagination to take over. But somehow this movie screws that up because it's so bad that all of these logical inconsistencies in the movie are glaring at you. And all of these weird, like disparate, unnecessary choices don't contribute anything, just are a stick out like a sore thumb. Why are the high-tech Buzz Lightyears in this movie? Why are they there? No one can answer this question. They're not even talked about in like 90% of the reviews that I've looked at of this movie. No one's even talking about them because they're not even part of the movie. This is like, they mean nothing. They do nothing. There's no reason for them to be there. They're just there. They're not even funny. You can have comic relief in a Toy Story movie, of course. The Key and Peele characters from Toy Story 4 are a great example of characters that they didn't need to be in the movie, but they were funny. So, like, it's okay. Like, they're just, you understand that's what they're there for. It's a side character's comic relief. These Buzz Lightyears aren't even funny. They're just there, doing nothing. They have no relationship to the rest of the film whatsoever. And they disappear at the end. And you never find out what happens to them, by the way. They're just gone. And Woody and Buzz do nothing the whole movie. Toy Story is about Woody and Buzz. I might having to hold back my anger about this because it just makes me so fucking pissed off. Toy Story is about Woody and Buzz. Yes, it's about other characters surrounding Woody and Buzz, obviously. There's a huge ensemble cast of characters. But the core of Toy Story is, has been, and should always be Woody and Buzz. And they get shafted in this movie. Totally emasculated, given nothing to do. They are pointless. The movie could have had Woody and Buzz totally removed. It wouldn't have made any difference at all. In fact, the movie would have probably been better off, because then it might not have been so fucking insulting. But they are in this movie, unfortunately. And they are, it is such a disservice to them. It makes me so angry. And Jessie comes off as the most selfish, just stupid character that has learned nothing in her 3 movies. Now in her 4th movie, she still learns nothing. She ostensibly learned something, but then it's immediately gone. The only good scene in the entire movie is immediately ruined and then forgotten about, and they move on. It is the most disappointing movie of all time, in my opinion. It's so egregiously bad and insulting to Toy Story fans and to anyone with a brain that it genuinely makes me like, I'm like shaking in anger. I hate Toy Story 5. I hate it. I am so upset that I spent $10 on a matinee of this movie. I wish I could get a refund, because they don't deserve my money. They don't deserve your money. And yet, this movie will make $1 billion. And for some reason, something like 3/4 of critics are saying this is the best thing since sliced bread. They love it. They're eating it up. I think they all got duped by the one Pixar moment in the movie, and they are trying to like justify how good the movie is surrounding that one moment. But they don't even know what they're talking about. They didn't watch the same movie as me, or they were tricked. They were like emotionally tricked. But I recognized very quickly that this movie sucks. And when you view it from the frame of this movie sucks, you see all of it. All of the cracks appear instantly. And it's just a cavalcade of disgusting, awful, insulting choices that should never have been made into a movie. Ever. I stand by that the sequence with Jessie, where she ends up back at Emily's old house, goes to the tree and finds the time capsule and learns that Emily loved her so much that she named her child after her, is a great like mini sequence for Jessie. And it should have been a short that was just that, and it would have been beautiful. 5 minutes. You could do it with no dialogue. It would have been beautiful. I would have loved every second of it. Because that would have been like the final closure for Jesse. A character that I love, by the way. I don't want anyone watching this, and I'm just gonna be honest, no one's watching this for 2.5 hours. But anyone that does watch or listen to this for some godforsaken reason, I want you to know that I love Jessie as a character. She is vitally important to Toy Story, especially Toy Story 2, where she is obviously like the emotional core of that film. And I love her relationship with Woody, and I love Joan Cusack as the voice. I think she's excellent. This movie made me dislike that character. And if that isn't the ultimate disservice that a movie could do as a sequel, I don't know what is. That this movie made me actively dislike Jessie. One of the most eminently likable characters ever. And by the end of this movie, I was just annoyed with her and insulted by the fact that she learns nothing and yet gets this happy ending. And like the whole movie is built around her, and she just comes off as like a bad person, weirdly, just selfish. She doesn't really consider anyone else. Ostensibly, you think she's considering Bonnie, but that's all selfish too. She wants Bonnie to make friends, but she wants Bonnie to make friends on her terms. And critically, she only wants Bonnie to have friends if she is involved in that relationship. Which is the exact opposite of the lesson that we've been taught in Toy Story up to this point. Which is that the toys, this is the point. The toys are there to provide comfort to their humans in their time of need. The toys are they fulfill their purpose by being there for their humans when their humans decide they need their toys. And ideally, that's for a long time. You know, like I would love for all of these toys to start with a kid as like a toddler, grow up with them, and then that kid donates those toys to another kid, like Andy did to Bonnie, and then they get to grow up and keep going. But they have already learned this lesson that it's not up to them. And Jessie supposedly learns this lesson again in this movie. She says it. It's not even implied. She says it directly to the camera. I'm not even joking. Right after that tree sequence, she literally says, maybe we just need to accept that we are there with our kids for the time that we have. And we just have to be okay with the fact that we were there for them at the right time when they needed us. She literally says that. But the whole movie takes a dump on that entire lesson. And it's so vapid and toothless that it can't even make a statement about the thing that it is advertising itself to be, which is a story about the way that modern technology has affected these toys. It doesn't even have anything to say about that. All of it flops. There's no closure, there's no lesson. It's just bleh. It was puked out by committee in this mess, this pile of garbage. I hated it. I hate it. I actively hate it. And I haven't felt this way about a movie in a really long time. I can't think of the last time I felt this angry. And I think it's because Toy Story means so much to me. One of the things that I was thinking about on the drive home from the movie was this movie is like trying to reset itself. It's trying to be Toy Story for a new generation of kids. That was always the premise after Toy Story 3, which I think it's a good message, you know, like obviously Toy Story 1 through 3 were released in a window of time that was perfect for someone like me who was born in the early 90s and grew up loving Toy Story and growing up with those characters. The payoff of Toy Story 3 is one of my all-time favorite movie moments ever because it speaks directly to the experience of the audience watching the film. We grew up at the same pace and the same time as Andy. And so our experience with those movies is so personal and it means so much. Everyone I know that's my age that has watched Toy Story 1 through 3 feels the same way. It's personal. It feels real to us. It feels like the perfect encapsulation of our entire childhood. And it's just it is beautiful. It's effortlessly beautiful. And Toy Story 4 was trying to reinvigorate the series and sort of start fresh, but also, you know, be sort of like an epilogue for Woody and Buzz. And I think Toy Story 4 was like a fine movie. I said this at the beginning of this video that I didn't hate Toy Story 4 at all. I thought it was actually pretty good. There are problems with that movie, obviously, but it didn't feel insulting. It still felt like a Toy Story movie. And critically, there was something to be said about Woody and his evolution and the end of that movie where Woody and Buzz separate for what should have been the final time, acknowledging their friendship and the growth that they've had over the course of those 4 movies is beautiful. And it may not have been a movie made specifically for me or my generation the way that the first 3 movies were, but it still felt like a Toy Story movie. And it didn't feel like a disservice. And the parts of it that I didn't get or didn't like, maybe that's just because I've outgrown it, or I'm like, I was okay with the ending of Toy Story 3 and I've moved past it. But I didn't hate it. Toy Story 5 just takes a massive dump on the entire thing. And it doesn't retroactively make Toy Story worse, but it does stain the legacy of the franchise, because now we have to accept that this movie exists, and it has the Toy Story name on it, and it's it just makes me feel betrayed. I think I said that already, but I think it just makes me feel betrayed. It's a movie that doesn't respect its source material. It doesn't respect its audience. It doesn't respect its own characters. It's just it's a disaster. And I'm I'm ready to like let it go and just never watch it again and like purge it from my memory, but I know that we're going to get a Toy Story 6, and that'll be the first time ever that I don't go see a Toy Story movie in theaters, cuz my trust has been broken. I don't trust it anymore. I don't This is the first Pixar movie that I've been to in probably a decade. I can't even remember the last Pixar movie I went to. Finding Dory, maybe. Besides Toy Story 4. Um, and The Incredibles 2. That movie also sucked. Not as bad as this though. Anyway, I don't trust Pixar anymore. I certainly don't trust Toy Story to be good anymore. I hope I'm wrong. I hope that this is the one really bad blemish on Toy Story, and that they learn their lesson, and Toy Story 6, when that inevitably happens, is a much better film. Um, but I don't have any hope, really, because I mean, I say I hope, but I don't really have any hope for it, because I've been so burned by this movie that the whole thing feels hopeless. And yeah, I wish I could get that time back, and I wish I'd never seen it, because at least then I would have had no opinion. I wouldn't have had this feeling of betrayal and anger and grief over this movie. But here we are, and that is what I feel, and I'm going to be honest about it. So 2.5 hours later, that is my Toy Story 5 review. Probably the most negative review I've ever given for anything. Certainly in this format. But I think it needed to be said, man. Everyone's going to disagree with me, by the way. I know for a fact that I'm going to get a lot of hate for this, and people are going to call me out and tell me I'm wrong and I'm stupid and I'm everything under the sun. But this is how I feel. It's my opinion. So I feel bad for anyone who watched this. I'm sorry. But it is what it is. See you next week. Bye bye.